All right, we may as well go ahead. So I'd like to welcome everyone on this bright and sunny February afternoon to one of our Advantage workshops. Today, myself, Amy Skio, and my colleague Vanya Banks is going to talk to you about building productive research partnerships. And so this topic is one of a series of Advantage workshops that are available to you through the Rio office. So if you're interested in attending any further workshops, feel free to check out the event section. I believe there's actually another one happening next week on March the 4th, and feel free to sign up for those as well. All right, so I will hand it over to Vanya to get us started.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for joining, everyone. So my name is Vanya Banks, as Amy mentioned, and I'm an Industry Liaison Officer at the Research Innovation Office. So yeah, let's get into it. So today we're going to be covering, no, of course I didn't advance the slide. So today we're going to be covering who the Research Innovation Office is, what are Advantage workshops, why collaboration matters, why industry might want to collaborate with academic partners, and how to set up your potential collaborations for success, as well as how to move them forward and how our office can help. So we are a service-based division of the Office of Research. We're here to help our faculty leverage their research to create impact, develop external partnerships, and realize benefits from their findings. So we do this through 4 different pillars in our office. Technology transfer staff in our office help our faculty evaluate, manage, and benefit from their inventions and protect their intellectual property. University of Guelph is inventor-owned in terms of the intellectual property policy, so it is our faculty members' choice whether they want to work with our technology transfer team or whether they want to take their IP and deal with it in a sort of a private manner in their own way and potentially start up a company from that. In Industry Liaison, we promote sponsored research programs across campus that are of strategic importance to the university. We manage relationships with companies to maintain existing strategic partnerships and, where possible, transition early stage interactions to long-term collaborative research projects. We also build relationships and increase interactions with faculty, especially those who are new to working with our office. And I should mention, when I say we, my colleague Gregor Lawson's actually joining in on the call today. I think he's just listening in, but it's myself and Gregor that are part of the Industry Liaison team, and I'll share our contact details with you later on so that you can reach out if you have any questions or need assistance with potential partners. Knowledge mobilization is a division in our office where the team helps our faculty with writing and executing knowledge mobilization strategies. They provide training in plain language writing and presentation skills so you can clearly communicate with a non-academic audience. And they help make connections through events, programs, and individual outreach with policymakers and other stakeholders. Finally, New Venture Creation is a U of G researcher-affiliated entrepreneurship program, which uses the successful model created by the Waterloo Accelerator Center. Accelerator Guelph, which is what it's called, guides researcher-affiliated teams to build successful, sustainable enterprises. So in terms of our Advantage workshops that Amy mentioned, they cover various topics, so anywhere from helping you win grants to generating more good ideas. Of course, today is the one focused on long-term collaborations, but these can be set up for groups as small as 6 people. So this is something that a faculty member could organize for their lab group if they just have a specific topic they want to focus on. So please feel free to reach out to our team if this is something that's of interest. So I'm going to pass this over to Amy.
All right. Thank you very much, Vanya. So we're going to talk a little bit about now. We're going to start the bulk of the discussion on why collaboration and relationships building actually matters, and what you need to know about it, and kind of the various steps that you need to consider when you're looking at building those relationships with external partners or people or whoever they might be. Sorry. Doesn't seem to want. All right, so to get us started, what I want people to do is just to test their assumptions about industry and about universities. So you see two different little sections here. The very first one, and you can feel free to jot down some of your responses in the chat if you would like to, or you can just think of them yourselves. But what I want you to do is to think about the first thing that you think about when you think about industry. And then I want you to think about industry cares about blank. And the problem with working with companies is blank. So anyone want to share? You can feel free to put it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and give us a sense of what initially comes to mind when we discuss industry. Anyone out there? No? That's okay. So sometimes when we think, people automatically think of industry as they think of, they're very fast paced and, not necessarily doing due diligence with their perhaps, oh, here we go. We've got someone saying industry cares about money. Industry cares about protecting property. Right. Okay. Now, when we flip that, universities are blank. Academia cares about blank. The problem with universities are. So how does that differ? How does your automatic assumptions between industry and universities differ? And there usually is a difference or a contrast in what your knee-jerk reaction. So we have, universities are public, academia cares about publications. So for example, sometimes from an outsider's view, the problem with working with universities, somebody might say, it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of red tape, for example. Somebody might say the problem with working with companies is that they don't take their time in doing things and it's much more fast paced. So it's interesting to just ask ourselves these things when we do think about building relationships, because in order to be able to build relationships, you need to kind of test your assumptions and see where that all nets out before you can kind of move forward and looking at various collaborations or relationships. So we definitely know that collaboration or relationships have a lot of benefits. We've got the obvious one tends to be funding. That tends to be top of mind. Access to market insight, looking at things that you normally wouldn't have available to you. Opportunities to solve real problems that are actually existing in the world. Access to unique skills and equipment, especially, looking at universities. They have some researchers have specific skill sets or knowledge that maybe industry would be very interested in, and goes the same opposite way as well. Collaborations provide meaningful experience for students at a university level. Definitely for myself in acting as a practicum coordinator for some students, my students would not be getting the experiences that they get if we didn't have these relationships and these collaborations with community partners. Definitely licensing opportunities is another really important thing to consider and benefit. And of course, that potential to bring products, processes, and services to the market that perhaps you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And knowledge mobilization and extension for sure. So we just want to take a moment to actually look at a case study or in a real life example of where collaborations and relationships have been really, really beneficial. And that is looking at the Guelph Family Health Study. And if you're not familiar with the Guelph Family Health Study at the University of Guelph, it's a multi-year study that was headed up by Dr. Ma and Dr. Jess Haynes. And it's a multi-year study that was designed to follow families, and they want to look at new ways to help families set good routines around eating, sleeping, and screen time. And so they have a plethora of partners, public health, the Guelph Community Health Center, Guelph Family Health Team. But what they did was they were able to really have a nice alignment with their sponsors, their community, the university, and also government. So they're definitely an example of really good relationship building and collaboration, and really benefits kind of at all the different levels. They actually were able to work together on campus initially, and that's where they kind of started off their visionary creation, their mission, and they aligned all of their goals with very simple communication pieces that had a very clear impact. And then from there, from the university level, they were able to engage with government and stakeholders to get buy-in. And then from there, they were able to communicate and recruit citizen partnerships. And having that community alignment was a really a benefit to being able to have a solid foundation as well. And then looking at all of the early successes that the initial phases of the research had, they were then able to really easily access private funding and grants. So they're a really good example of how you can take relationships and collaboration and really be able to have everyone involved benefit. So I just want to, put out to you, why would someone want to seek academic partners? Does anyone in the chat identify any reasons why they would see a benefit of outside industry, or doesn't necessarily even have to be industry, but why would someone want to seek academic partnerships and build those relationships? Funding, definitely. Expertise, for sure. Well, definitely just being able to think about what the university has to offer. Maybe they want to show legitimacy with a product or something that they are developing. They want that third party to be able to give the nod on something and be able to rely on more than just what their industry would show. Perhaps they want to increase reputation around something, and that infrastructure and equipment, definitely. Things that are available within an academic institution might be well beyond what they have available to them in their community or in their industry. For sure. Oops. And again, taking it a step further, who seeks academic partners? Can you think of who might benefit from partnering and building relationships from academia? Well, definitely anyone that would be in the early stages of entrepreneurship, for example, startups, exactly. Definitely. Often startups have these wonderful, bright ideas, and they need to have more information to be able to back up why and what they're doing. Those who want to do research but aren't sure how to begin, exactly. So that's where academia and universities have that extra that expertise in and around the areas that they need in order to broaden what they are doing, for sure, within the industry level. And when we look at the needs of industry partners, they usually are a little bit different compared to looking at community versus industry. So they want quick, actionable results. They want a competitive advantage. So that's why they're looking often to universities to give them that. Protection of IP or trade secrets. They want clear and timely communication. They perhaps have resources, but they want to be more efficient with the use of those resources. And again, as you already mentioned, the access to the facilities and the expertise, definitely. And when we look at community partner needs, it's a little bit different usually. It doesn't tend to be as much bottom line heavy, but looking more at being able to leverage various resources that might exist in the community. Maybe they have access to facilities and that expertise for sure. They want to create a positive impact. And this is one of the definite parts that goes along with a community partnership and collaboration. And they want that outside validation as well, in addition to the clear and timely communication that academia can offer. All right, and I will pass it over to Vanya to continue.
Thanks. So when we're talking about support and sort of the nature of collaborative projects, there's really a spectrum of collaborative funding and associated agreements at U of G that can be received from external partners depending on the nature of the collaboration. So for example, with philanthropy, money is usually gifted for a general research topic. So there are seldom specific questions that need to be addressed within this type of work, but more of a general support for a specific initiative or a research program. Next, there's next under a research grant or a grant and aid in our university, as it's referred to. This can support research on a project basis with an individual faculty member, but IP terms, when I say IP, I mean intellectual property, and publication policies at the university cannot be negotiated. So in this instance, it is more of a sort of a project basis, and there are some outcomes attached to it, but the partner would have to accept the terms in the agreement as is. Finally, a research contract generally has specific objectives and deliverables around intellectual property and publication, specific objectives and deliverables, but IP and publication terms are negotiable on a case-by-case basis. So depending on the scope of work and the nature of the partnership, who's involved, this type of partnership can also be leveraged against government funding programs such as NSERC Alliance or MyTax or OCE, who have recently actually been renamed to OCI. So in terms of research contracts, there are several government-funded programs that most of you are likely familiar with that enable you to leverage external partner contributions on a 1-to-1 or even 2-to-1 scale. Although eligibility requirements can vary for each of these programs, they generally require that the external partner can provide an economic benefit to Canada in this area of research. So this usually means having R&D or manufacturing in Canada if it's a federal program, like NSERC, for example, and in Ontario for provincial programs. In some instances, international companies may be eligible as long as they are able to deliver a strong economic or societal benefit in Canada, but this should generally be verified with the specific funding agency that you're considering. So in terms of IP that might be created as a result of a collaborative project, these funding agencies don't actually take any stake in the intellectual property. I know sometimes this can be the case in for example, some US-based funding programs. But for most programs in Canada, they dictate that the intellectual property is actually governed by the university's IP policy. So in that case, it would kind of be negotiable on a case-by-case basis, but would resort to our starting sort of creator-owned IP terms. Because these government agencies are publicly funded, the knowledge created must be publishable, and there can be no delay to a student's graduation. So this is just something to keep in mind if you're considering applying to these funding programs and you're having discussions with industry partners, just to be able to manage expectations. So in terms of sort of the development process when it comes to partnerships, these are sort of the suggested general steps when you are developing a novel partnership with an external partner. So this is whether you or someone at our office receives an inquiry about a collaborative research opportunity. So really the first three steps are important to make sure that there is an alignment of resources, expectations, and outcomes in order to move forward to the next three steps in working together and potentially submitting an application for external funding. In the first three steps, it's really important to understand the potential partner's needs and qualifications, to discuss research interests and their capacity in this area, to discuss additional factors such as intellectual property or timelines, and to develop a research plan, confirm budgets and funding, and identify potential funding opportunities. So this is where a lot of the industry liaison activity in our office actually occurs, and that we're really able to help throughout this entire process. Of course, the latter three steps, we are able to review applications, but most of course, the grant writing does sort of land with the faculty member and the industry partner. It's more of a collaborative process. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind when you're talking to, especially new partners. And I'm going to pass that over to Amy. Oh, Amy, you're on mute.
I knew I was going to forget that. So now that we know a little bit more around the stepwise procedures around collaborations and partnerships, we want to talk a bit about actually positioning yourself for success in relationship building and partnership collaboration. So something to keep in mind is that this nice little quote, and I think it's a really good quote to always keep in the back of your mind, that I don't have a partnership with the university, I have partnerships with the researchers. And so again, it all comes back to that personal relationship. And so it's important to kind of keep that in mind when you are thinking about partnerships and ongoing relationships. So, of course, being able to network and expand your current, who is listening to your message is really important to be able to do. And even more so now, of course, during the last year when we have been online a little bit more, we don't have necessarily those physical opportunities to be able to attend those conferences, etc. However, there's obviously a lot more things now available online. And so it's important to also just keep up with expanding your network of people to know about your research, so that, you start to develop those initial relationships. So still being able to go to online conferences. Obviously, people that you're talking to may refer you to other people. You may ask, if they know someone that might be interested in whatever area of research that you're doing. LinkedIn is a fantastic resource, and I actually feel as if LinkedIn is only becoming a stronger resource for networking and relationship building, because they do tend to have a lot more features that are being added in and being able to connect people of various subject areas. Social media, obviously, is another one that I don't know whether or not you want to be doing some TikTok reels on your research, but definitely different ways exist to be able to broaden the reach of your message around the research that you are doing. Obviously, trade publications and specific events specific to your research or those who might be interested in your research are always important to just keep in mind. And it seems like something very obvious, but definitely just keeping, the idea of first impressions. It still really counts. It takes just 1/10 of a second to form an impression of a stranger from the glimpse on their face. So that really is even the same online. So making eye contact with people, smile, and having open body language will take you a long way in that initial relationship building phase. And even online, still people have make these automatic reactions and assumptions of people. So something to keep in mind even as we are online. We have someone saying that they think that Twitter is better for the scientific community, and I would have to agree with that. Definitely, Twitter is a fantastic resource to be able to get some of those key messages out and get opinions on people and make those additional connections. The other thing that I would love people to start thinking about is having an elevator pitch. And I don't know if this is something that people have thought about before, but definitely thinking of your research and creating a very small, short elevator pitch. It's more or less something that if you're liaising with someone and they say, so tell me about what your research is about. It gives an overall concept or message in a very engaging and simple way that anyone could understand. That's kind of what you're trying to get at. So here's a template that you can use, and Kelly will provide this template to you after today's session so that you can take an opportunity to just sit back and think a little bit about how you might like to fill in these blanks. So, you just kind of think of it as if you're at a conference and you're introducing yourself and explaining what it is that you do. So, hello, I'm so-and-so. I use my background in whatever to whatever it is that you want your outcome to be. You're trying to, so perhaps it is, oh gosh, I don't know, trying to figure out a vaccine for COVID. That could be a really great and timely research project right now. Perhaps you're here in this meeting or whatever because, so how this is relevant to you. And you might say, even though I'm researching X, what you really need to know me is about blah, blah, blah. So it's just a way to form a quick relationship with the people that you might be with, and they get in a very simple and easy to understand way what it is you're doing and how that might relate to them as well. All right, and I'm going to pass it back to Vanya.
Thanks. I guess basically, if you're at the stage where you think you want to work with someone, we're going to talk about where do you go from here and what you should expect. So just some general tips for developing potential partnerships. So there's a few factors to consider when you're talking to external partners and hoping to work with them. First of all, be patient, as external organizations, especially larger private companies, can have long decision times on how to use their R&D budgets. Secondly, manage partner expectations early and often. So to avoid disappointment, try to touch base with your partner as often as you can, just to stay on top of, whether you still want to work together, passing back and forth ideas, kind of keeping the connection warm. Don't be discouraged by false starts. So timelines and priorities can change sometimes. When you're talking to potential partners, try to learn about their full interest in the area of your research, so that you can consider future research projects or develop a roadmap if the partnership goes well. If their priorities change, decide if you are prepared to pivot the project and whether it would still suit your research program. And finally, get to know your partners well before committing to ensure a good working relationship. So also it's important to make sure that your goals, like overall, align with your partners before deciding to work with them. So ideally, if you're collaborating with an external partner, you'll land somewhere in the middle of this graph where your partner will likely commercialize your findings for you or utilize them somehow in their operations. However, if you are wanting to own your own startup, then partnering up with a company who wants to commercialize that IP is probably not the way to go. This doesn't mean that you can't have different streams of your research program that are targeted towards different stages and outcomes represented here. Oh, there we go. So first of all, it's important to before you start working on a potential project. Create a foundation of trust by using clear language and communicating often with your partners, as I mentioned. Define and agree upon a common purpose and goal that aligns with your vision and your partners. And do background research and check references on your partner to ensure they can actually utilize these results and take them further. To help with these steps in general, myself and Gregor can facilitate conversations along the way to assist with communication and expectation management. In my experience, misalignment and poor early communication has often been the cause of an unsuccessful collaborative project, because it can basically cause issues with sort of what the outcomes are and what you're both hoping to get out of the project. So during this stage, it's important to ask the hard questions. So, for example, what resources does your partner have that they're willing to put forward towards this project in terms of supplies, equipment, actual cash towards the project? Will they work with you to leverage funding through additional grants if necessary? What are they expecting in terms of intellectual property or publication? Do they want students involved? These are all things that you want to consider and ask in the beginning, so that you can make sure that you're both on the same page. And if you don't feel comfortable asking, or you think it might be too early, again, feel free to loop myself or Gregor in, and we can assist in these negotiations and bringing up these questions. So next, if you've determined that you would like to work with a potential partner, you'll work together to plan the project. So it's important to clarify everyone's roles and responsibilities within your team and the partner's team, set deadlines, schedule milestones, establish clear lines of communication throughout the project, appoint a project manager potentially, who will be held to account, and potentially even trade places, so job shadow one another with your partner to ensure that results could be easily translated from your lab to their workplace. And then align expectations regarding outcomes as well. Making sure that your expectations and outcomes align is really key to a successful relationship. So, think about what the deliverables will be. Will you produce a report for them? Is the deliverable a prototype of some kind? Things like that. So again, this is just to reiterate that it might be beneficial to do a type of job shadowing, to really understand how your partners intend to use the results from the research project so that they could be easily transferred to their operations. So once you're on the same page about what the project will look like and what the outcomes will be, I generally recommend that you develop a high-level one-pager to discuss several options to get partners to agree on the best route forward. It may take some back and forth to nail down the exact path you will take and grants you may choose to leverage the project through. But in general, in terms of writing this proposal, always try to present more than one option to the partner. I find that this really helps display interest in a potential continued partnership with them. It shows that your team is flexible in terms of the deliverables and the scope of work, and it conveys opportunities for increased funding could provide, as well as shows the impact of the budget on the scope of work. So then once you've agreed on a scope of work and you've potentially applied to external funding, or you've sort of started the project, be careful to document the research methods, capture accurate data, and keep your partners in the loop regularly on progress and any troubleshooting. So this means recording detailed methods, noting all sources of information, such as equipment and material specifications, methodology, photos, things like that. Using high statistical standards for data capture and scheduling regular meetings with them. So again, it's that transferability piece. with the project, and really making sure that your partners are in the loop to maintain those lines of communication and make sure everyone's on the right track. So once you complete your project, it's a good idea to meet with your partner to conduct a plus delta analysis at the end of the project. Create a summary report that includes things like metrics, suggested follow-on projects, and find ways to stay in touch with partners. Likely in this day and age, it might be largely through social media and virtual meetings or lunches. But generally, a plus delta analysis is essentially, talking about things that went well during the project, what should be done in the same way in the future should you decide to collaborate it again. And the delta is really, what are some things that we could change to improve future projects or outcomes. And in terms of resources that you can lean on for further information around really partnering with external groups, our group actually developed, we adapted a guide to research partnerships that was made for Canadian universities in general, but we made one specifically for University of Guelph, and it's up on our website. So this is a good guide to share with potential partners because it covers general terms in our agreements. It also gives examples of research partnerships and just gives, especially partners who might not have had academic collaborations, just a little bit food for thought and a bit of a background on how things work. And then there's some other links here that you can check out. I believe this recording will be shared with everyone that's attending, so you can just click on the slides there. And in general, I just want to say again, I know I've mentioned it throughout the presentation, but myself and Gregor are here to help. So always please feel free to reach out in any stage of the process. Like I mentioned, our group really helps researchers obtain funding for collaborative projects with non-academic partners. So this could be in any sector. And these are just some of the activities that we do on our day-to-day. So facilitating meetings, assisting with planning around, what funding you might be able to access for a specific project, discuss qualification of potential partners. So really kind of doing that initial inquiry stage to understand whether partners can actually have the resources to engage with you and facilitate that knowledge further. We also receive inquiries ourselves, so we often might reach out to you and your teams to see whether you're interested in working with potential partners. We assist with those early stage conversations around, potential intellectual property, publication terms. We help review applications, like I mentioned, for some of those programs like NSERC Alliance, and can provide advice on non-disclosure agreements and contracts, as well as provide outreach for recruitment of partners for strategic initiatives. These are just some of the grants that we usually work with. I'm sure many of you recognize them. This is our contact information. So again, you can find this on our site as well, but basically just feel free to reach out. And I've gone too far. So we'll just leave it there. And you can jot down our info if you'd like to reach out and you have any questions about the content provided today. And yeah, thank you all for joining. And Amy, I don't know if you have anything else to add or if we can just maybe take questions.
Sure, yeah. If anyone has some questions, feel free to ask away. Oh, good, thank you. You're welcome, Sarah. All right, well, it doesn't look like there is any questions unless someone's feverishly typing away, but I don't, oh, no questions, but thank you. Excellent. Well, thank you very much to everyone for coming to today's workshop. And yeah, by all means, be sure to take advantage of Vanya and Gregor and their expertise with the industry liaison at the office, because certainly, you know, while you have the opportunity, you definitely want to reach out. I would highly recommend that, and also take advantage of the upcoming events that are happening at the Rio office as well.
And sorry, everyone, I actually should also mention, I noticed Emily is here as well. So we do have, if you are interested in MyTax specifically, we do have a relatively new addition, a cross-appointed position in our office, Emily Gordon, and she's our MyTax U of G business development specialist. So sorry, I didn't actually provide her contact information on there, but if you need to get in touch with Emily, just reach out to one of us and we can connect you. And thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone.